This is Hemant.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast. You could listen on YouTube. We have a Discord server for those who enjoy that. Mm-hmm. There's also a bonus episode for anyone who gives $5 a month. And we have much to talk about. As I was telling Jessica before we started, pretty much every story I wrote down for today is stuff we could spend an entire episode on. What was else?
Just before we get into it, I just wanted to remind people I haven't spoken about it in a while because I've been having other things on my plate. But June 10th, if you live in New York or in the area, meet us at Hinterlands on June 10th. It's a Friday evening at 7 o'clock, I think, 7:30. I'll probably be there for a few hours. It's going to be a few of my other friends as well. But come meet up. I think I'll tweet about it or something like that. Here we go. This has been a rough week, eh?
Everything is rough. I just want to take a second for the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, because by the time you're hearing this, you will have heard everything about that. But, of course, one of the things that comes up after a mass shooting these days is a litany of Republicans who constantly say the way to fix this is putting more Jesus in school, putting more Christianity in school. If they had the Bible in school, if they had the Ten Commandments in there, I've already heard some politicians make reference to things like that, as if the reason this happened is only because, there's not enough religion in school.
Yeah, as if there's never been a church shooting.
Yeah, and as if we haven't heard
Christian
the excuse,
perpetrator.
the same one for 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even know. One ththing I did notice, they don't say thoughts and prayers anymore. The politicians.
It's mental health now.
Yeah, and it's like hope. I forgot the phrasing they used because every time I saw it, I just was like, "Fuck, Kirsten Sinema for saying that."
The thing I keep saying is we have a mental health crisis in this country, which is not untrue, but they're not going to do anything about that either.
Horrified,
so I'm not sure why we're bringing that up.
Horrified and heartbroken.
Yeah,
that's the phrase they are all using now because they get a lot of shit for saying thoughts and prayers because everyone knows that's Christianese.
Horrified and heartbroken is a good edit.
Yeah, thoughts and prayers are like, we're not going to do anything, and everyone knows the code by now.
Yeah.
So they've switched it to horrified and heartbroken because it takes the pressure off. Prayers aren't going to do anything.
I'm not horrified anymore, though. Like, how can I keep being horrified when the same thing happens once a week for my entire adulthood? Like, I'm not horrified. This is my life. This is just...
Someone said, like, this is not America. No, buddy, this is absolutely...
What year was Columbine? 90...
my high school, we're talking 98?
98, yeah, I was in junior high. So this has been my entire life, has been school shootings. So not horrified, just disappointed and numb and tired.
And everything is awful. I don't know if this counts as good news at all, given how shitty everything is, but this one... is worth talking about. Josh Duggar was sentenced finally after years. And I think because his whole shenanigans, the story happened like more than a year ago, it's worth just mentioning why he's going to jail, because Josh Duggar's going to jail.
Yeah, sure is.
And just some, what they said, I'll start with the top line statement. He was sentenced to 151 months, which is more than 12 years, for downloading and possessing illicit images of child sexual abuse. And just in case people have forgotten the story, here's kind of the background here. In 2019, Josh Duggar, the Quiverful family, I forgot if he's the oldest child of the Duggars. I think he is. But the 19 kids and counting family, that family was on the air, on TV for many years as we're these conservative Christians with as many babies as God will give us. And all these, and they made plenty of money over the years as a family for this show and for what they did. And then we found out years ago, oh, hey, Josh Duggar molested his sisters and another girl, touched them inappropriately when they were kids. And I don't think he was a kid, but that wasn't even the issue because like they sent him away to Christian rehab and nothing happened and
Well,
whatever.
yeah, that's how the Catholics fixed all their priests.
So 2019 comes around. Josh Duggar's now working at like a car lot, sells cars, whatever. Fine, do your thing. Federal agents came to his car lot and like that was news because it's like, why are you at Josh Duggar's car lot? What we found out later is that he had allegedly downloaded I don't want to say it on the podcast, but he downloaded illicit content from like the dark web, or whatever it was. The feds took his computers, they took his phone. Apparently, he said to the cops when they took away everything, "What's this about? Has anyone been downloading child stuff?"
Oh, boy.
No one suggested that. He literally volunteered that.
That's like at the end of like one of the, who's the guy? One More Thing. Who's that guy? Columbo.
Really going with the modern references
Which is
here.
that kind of thing of like, but wait, I didn't say she was shot. I just said she was dead. I don't have a Columbo impression. I'm not sure if that's anything, but that really feels like a 1980s writer
Where he just
put that together.
accidentally divulges
Well,
this last
nobody
thing.
found any kiddie porn, did they? Because
Right.
that would be the worst thing I can imagine. Me personally, Josh Duggar, a person who does not like child pornography.
And the feds found out that he used like a browser that allows him to access illicit material. And also on his computer, by the way, was a Christian censorship program called Covenant Eyes.
That's right, because his wife was like not in on it, but knew he had a capital P problem.
Yeah.
right?
And so technically what that app is supposed to do is if you go to an adult site, it'll send like alerts to everyone on your list. Like, guys, he's looking at it again. But he found a way around it because it's not good
I
software.
didn't realize it went to a lot of people.
Whoever you
That's
put on
fucked.
your accountability list, really. So he downloaded the illegal stuff using a workaround that didn't trigger the Christian program, which tells you a lot about the Christian program. And the feds eventually found over 200 images that were bad. And they found out that someone had both viewed them and tried to delete them. Like that information is there. During the trial, he was like, maybe someone else like came to my lot and stood in the thing and used the hotspot, and that was it.
Put in my
Like,
passcode
jury
and put on
didn't buy
a
it.
Josh Duggar mask. And
Yeah. Last year, a jury found him guilty on 2 counts, and then the question is, that was last year. We were waiting this whole time to find out, okay, he's guilty, but how long is he going to be sent to jail? He could have had 40 years in jail, one for downloading this content and viewing it, and another for distributing it to others. And here's basically what happened this week. Both sides agreed there's, I guess, not enough evidence to get him on distributing it to other people. And both sides agreed we'll drop that charge.
okay.
40-year maximum in prison drops to 20-year maximum. The prosecutors are
And
like,
he's our age?
he's late 30s, I think.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Something like that. So the prosecutors are like, well, give him all 20 years for the downloading and possessing stuff. Josh Duggar's lawyers are like, give him 5. He's a good boy. His wife is like, he's the daddy of like 7 kids.
Yeah.
His mom.
He has a brood he needs to tend to.
Yeah. Actually, his wife said she asked the judge to consider reuniting us as a family again soon, which, okay, fine. His lawyers said Josh Duggar lived an admirable life while navigating unique challenges associated with being in the public spotlight since childhood.
What were the admirable parts?
I'm not sure. He
Besides
did make
all
a
of the children.
robocall asking people to vote against, like, trans safety laws.
Oh, that's neat. I just don't think when people are like, he lived a noble life, like having many children isn't a noble like pursuit. Most people can have children. Most people can have children and also not have child pornography on their computer. So I don't think just him hitting the one thing is enough.
I forgot about this until I was going through the story. You know what was going on during the guilty verdict and this sentencing time? Jim Bob Duggar, his daddy, the patriarch of the family, ran
for
for
office.
Arkansas State
Yeah,
Senate on a platform of family values. He lost. He lost the primary.
Jeez Louise.
But anyway, the Duggar's lawyer said give him 5 years. Prosecutor said give him all 20.
Yeah.
Judge said I'll give him 12. 12 years, 7 months in prison. even with good behavior or whatnot behind bars, he's going to be away for a while. Hopefully his kids will have aged out of damage control mode, I guess.
God, and they're not going to get them into therapy. They're just going to send them to other priests, these poor kids.
Prayers for those kids or whatever. But
honestly, one caseworker could go down to that section of Arkansas and like have their case full of just Duggars. If somebody's looking for clients, like for therapy.
Josh Duggar used to work for the Family Research Council, and the head.
Racism?
What are the best ways to hurt LGBTQ people? Tony Perkins, still, I believe, the head of Family Research Council, has not said anything about Josh Duggar today. Surprise, surprise.
Sure, weird.
Again, favorite's the wrong word here, but the one thing after this verdict, after the sentencing came out, are all the pictures of Josh Duggar with every Republican luminary. Like, here's him and Ted Cruz. Here's him and whoever.
Which that doesn't carry a ton of cachet for me, because like that happened with Harvey Weinstein and
everyone
fucking
has
Jeffrey
a picture
Epstein.
with everybody.
Like, yeah, there's a picture of like my aunt and uncle with Hillary Clinton. They don't know who my aunt and uncle are.
So Josh Duggar is going to prison. There's your good news story. How long? Who knows? I will say, I do not appreciate the comments I saw everywhere. Like, good, he's going to prison. They'll get him good.
No,
like, don't make that
we
joke.
shouldn't advocate for rape in any sense, even in prison, especially in prison. Actually, I shouldn't have said even in prison. Hey, Hammond, just really a quick question, just before, because I'm sure whatever we're going to get into next is going to be terrible.
It will be.
Not that I want to, but if I asked you to, would you know how to get to like the dark web, like where people get like assassins and drugs?
Are you looking? Do we
I'm
need
not
to talk
looking.
off mic?
It's just it occurs to me that I don't even know what the dark web is. I hear it. It just feels like a thing from a 1990s hacker movie that all, the screen is black and the digits are all lime green.
I feel like there's someone who's written us before who's like, listen, it's not actually a dark web. It's blah, blah, blah.
Have I done this before?
I think we've done this before, and they've got mad at us for using incorrect jargon.
What's Silk Road?
That's closed a long time ago.
Okay.
I know this because my shop got... There is a way to do it. It's just like you can't go to Google and find it. That's the thing we're talking about. You got to like
so you just have to type it in the browser bar?
Pretty much. Like you got to know how to get to the things you want to get to. And Josh Duggar knew how to get to the stuff he wanted to get to.
Darkweb.pirate?
That's exactly what it is. You are the worst hacker to exist anywhere. Okay, let's talk about this church.
I'm going to think of another little fun anecdote for between the next thing. Okay,
this is the wildest video that I saw in a long time. So last Sunday, as we're making this, New Life Christian Church in Warsaw, Indiana.
Sorry, May 22nd, in case people are listening to this.
Thank you.
May 22nd? Okay.
That sounds about right. But yeah, there's a church in Warsaw, Indiana. Pastor John B. Lowe, L-O-W-E, gets on stage. And here's the deal. Here's what I see. Okay. There's a live stream of their sermon, as there is every week. And at the end of the service, where people are singing worship music and the pastor says some parting words. Mm-hmm. And then at the very end of the video, you basically hear him say something like, God wants to give you the saving knowledge of Christ. Everyone come on board, whatever, Christian, whatever. And then it fades out to the screen and the live stream ends. Okay. Well, someone in the congregation kept the camera rolling because they knew something was about to happen.
An official camera or like a phone
camera?
Okay.
And what they caught was the pastor, now that the live stream's off, is like, I got to say something to this church. Okay. I'm not going to read you everything he said, but here's the gist of it. He says, I committed adultery. It was nearly 20 years ago. It continued far too long, ... I have no defense. I committed the adultery. To say it plainly, I didn't make a mistake. I didn't have an issue. I didn't have an affair. I didn't make a misjudgment. I sinned.
Okay.
I need to say that, and you deserve to hear it. ... While applying church discipline for sexual failure, for repentance, confession, and restoration, I myself had not been disciplined for sexual misconduct. So in accordance with ... In accordance with our church bylaws, I'm stepping down from ministry responsibilities.
Okay.
This is like a 5-6 minute speech that I just condensed for you there, but that's basically what he tells the congregation. And during all of this, they're pretty silent. They're listening. honestly, the reaction from the crowd is not one of like, oh, how could you? It was more like, oh, a long time ago you did something bad. You felt the need to get it off your chest. We get it.
Yeah.
You know, all right, fine. And basically he said, I'm stepping down doesn't mean I'm not coming back later. Like, let me go to Christian rehab, the Josh Duggar kind for 2 minutes. I'll be back. So right after that, after he finishes the speech, and this is why someone was filming, because they knew this was going to happen or something, a husband and wife get up on stage. And basically, the guy says to the crowd, you know, if you love us, please let us talk, because we're taking the mic here. And basically, here's the woman, his wife. She gets the microphone.
We don't have context of who these people are.
At least for anyone watching the video, no, you don't.
Okay.
But these husband and wife gets up there. Wife takes the mic. For 27 years, I lived in a prison. It was not 20 years, she says to the priest. I would still be in a prison if my brother, and many of you know him, had not approached me 2 weeks ago with what he had seen as a teenager that bothered him all these years. His pastor, Lowe, in bed with his younger sister with t-shirt and underwear on. And as she keeps talking, she says, I was just 16 when you took my virginity on your office floor. Do you remember that? I know you do, and I have plenty of other stories that I could bring to your remembrance. You did things to my teenage body that had never and should never have been done. ... The church deserves to know the truth. This church has been built on lies, but no more.
Wow.
So the pastor had said, I committed adultery 20 years ago. She says, it wasn't adultery. It was sexual assault. I was the victim. I was 16 when it started. She also, the guy's son, the pastor's son, must have said something. It's hard to hear because he's not with the microphone. And they say to him, if I would have gotten counseling, your dad would be in prison.
Wow.
Apparently this happened for a while. The husband takes the mic at some point. He says, this is a necklace you must have given her. It was a ministry gift. I'm giving this back to you. This is a covenant purity ring, which she wore while that man had sex with her. Drops that on the podium. He's like, we're done. Drop the mic. They leave the stage. And all of a sudden, there is some conversation from the crowd. Like, if you did it, you need to admit it to the pastor. Like, for a second, there's a glimmer of hope that this congregation's going to turn on this guy. And he says to them, I told you I committed adultery. I told you it went on too long.
That's not adultery. That's fornication, even in your biblical terms.
Yeah. And at the end of, they didn't really get into a fight beyond that. But after he does all this, and this is the end of the video, like, she leaves with her husband. Their friends must have been there. They knew this was going to happen. They embrace the couple and they kind of walk out.
Yeah.
The pastor says something, I don't know what it was, wasn't important, gets on stage. Then you hear someone yell out from the crowd like, we love you.
No.
And the entire church goes to greet the pastor on stage, lay their arms on him in what looks like a group embrace, but they're laying their hands on him in prayer or whatever you want to call that.
Oh my God.
They basically embraced him. They did not do that to her. And in case you're wondering, 16 is the age of consent in Indiana. But again, there's two ways to look at this. Legally speaking, I'm not sure if because he was in a position of power over her, that changes the rules. Sexual assault, ethically though, sexual assault is sexual assault, regardless of what happened.
Where in Indiana was
Warsaw, Indiana. For what it's worth, the church... this is not funny, but I found it funny. The church shut down its Facebook page, and it shut, right? But they didn't shut down their Instagram. And the last post they made on Instagram was, it's an advertisement for an upcoming Marriage Matters class. And there's a banner over it that says, canceled. To all married couples, Marriage Matters is canceled this evening.
I wonder why. Did there's something going on?
2 updates with this. I'm not going to say this wrong. The Kosciuszko County Prosecutor's Office says there is a pending investigation into the matter. They said that this week. It seems like what happened is this woman now, must have either repressed it or didn't realize the significance of it until this was brought to her attention by her brother. So a couple of weeks ago, she must have gone to authorities. She must have gone to the church leaders and said, this is a thing you need to address because I already went to the cops about it. I'm making that up. I don't know if that happened, but it sounds like that's what happened. That's why the pastor felt the need to address it then and there. And that's why she was at the church to make sure that was going to happen. Second update is the church put out a statement. Among other things, these are the elders of the church. When Pastor Lowe offered his confession, he also announced that he would be stepping down. ... They basically said, in the wake of what has now been revealed, we are hurting and broken for a woman who has lovingly attended and served in the church for many years. Yeah. Our brokenness extends to Pastor John B. Lowe II. For 42 years, our church has taught and preached a message of repentance, forgiveness, blah, blah, blah. Basically saying, we love him. We hope he redeems himself. We love her. Sure you do. And saying, the one thing I took away from that message is they said, we literally did not know anything about this until now. So don't blame us. We weren't trying to cover this up. That's what I took from that letter. But what happened? It was caught on video. The reaction to the priest's way of gaslighting everybody into what happened, the woman's way of saying, no, I was there. These people know what you did to me. There's more. She even alluded to the fact that there were other people who were not witnesses per se, but they know about this stuff. This story's not over, but holy crap.
I'm trying to find, there's a name for what you just described that has to do with, Darvo. Have you ever heard of that? Darvo, it's when if you address somebody who has been abusing you and say you've been abusing me, it's called Darvo, deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender, which is I'm not
pastor's the victim.
Yeah, you're abused. You accuse me of this thing. How could you put me through this thing? Which is what this rings of. So this is why women don't come forward. How many more examples do we need of this kind of thing? On HBO, do you know the musical Spring Awakening? Is that
heard
in your
of it?
purview?
Don't know it.
It's something I only kind of discovered during the pandemic. I knew of it, but I sort of missed the boat on it. I was into Wicked like a dork. But essentially it's about 18th century German kids who are discovering sex, and it's about them trying to deal with adult things while the adults in their life continue to treat them like children, to the detriment of all. And there is a song about sexual assault, about a young woman whose father has been assaulting her with the mother's knowledge. And they were interviewing the actors who played this. It's a 15-year anniversary, so they did a thing on HBO Max, or they did a reunion thing, and then they did a doc on HBO Max. Anyway, one of the women who sings the song about sexual assault said that they're kind of talking about the cultural impact of what's going on. That deals with suicide, it deals with rape, it deals with all this kind of thing, abortion, pregnancy. But this actress said, when the show started getting popular, we got so many letters from kids who said, I was molested, and I've never told anybody in my entire life. You're the first person I'm telling. And this happened to me, and I didn't know this happened to other people. And the reality is this sort of abuse, especially from powerful people, not powerful people in position of authority over the victim, in addition to just being an adult, this is happening all the time. It's happening everywhere. And when kids say something about it, they're not believed. When adults say something about what happened to them as children, they're not believed. When women come forward and say, this happened to me yesterday, they're not believed. So it's kind of hard, frankly, to understand why anybody would come forward anymore. Because this is what happens. Oh, we forgive you, Pastor Fartface. Oh my goodness, you're so brave for admitting that you did a bad thing, even though you minimized it and did not take any emotional responsibility for what you did to her. Because what did he say? He said, I sinned. I committed adultery. He talked about what he did, his wife, right? I sinned. I had a lapse in judgment. I was weak. Not the actions I performed hurt a young person who's supposed to be in my care, a young person who I am supposed to be a mentor for and a spiritual guide for. And I violated that. And I raped her. And this girl who I told she shouldn't have sex and that she needed to stay pure, I took that from her too. But good for him for confessing, I guess.
Piggybacking on that story, this was probably the biggest news in the world of religion this week. The Southern Baptist Convention, the largest Protestant denomination in the country, basically released a massive, long-standing internal investigation into their own sex abuse crisis. And a little background before I tell you.
This is CPAC?
No, this is Southern Baptist.
Oh, Southern Baptist. I'm so sorry.
And the thing about this, let me give you some background so that the report makes some sense to you. In 2019, the Houston Chronicle and the San Antonio Express News published several articles, like a blockbuster series on sexual abuse in Southern Baptist churches. And here's the thing. We've all heard about sexual abuse in Catholic churches, but the Catholic Church is top down. Like, we hear about priests shifting from church to church. And the thing is, people in the hierarchy of the Catholic Church, the problem is they know what's going on. They know the accusations and they shift people around. Sure, it might mostly have happened a long time ago, but like they knew about this stuff and they did nothing about it. With the Southern Baptists, they don't have that hierarchy. It's kind of a loose connection of all these thousands of churches. Yeah, there's an executive committee that kind of runs where some of their mission work goes and stuff like that. But it's not like there's a pope of Southern Baptists that tells everyone. So this was kind of the problem where abuse happens in church and church and church. But like, who do you tell about that sort of thing? There isn't some dude you go to say that. But
there's no pope.
There is no pope there. But what happened? So what the two newspapers found, they found that over the past decade, according to the records they could figure out, more than 250 staffers or volunteers with Southern Baptist churches had been charged with sex crimes against more than 700 victims. 250 is what they found. That included the International Mission Board, which is like their missionary arm that sends Christians to various places. They have a budget of $158 million. They have 3,600 members. And the reporters found several members of this International Mission Board were credibly accused of abuse, and several other members of the board helped cover it up. And the thing is, when they were going to all these leaders of the Southern Baptist Convention, they're like, well, what do you people do about all this? They're like, well, we can't do anything. We have no authority over all these churches. We can't tell them to shut down.
Right.
We can't take away their funding because they're self-owned franchisees or whatever. So that was the issue. And by the way, the reporters for those newspapers, there's no database of bad actors.
Sure.
Because the Southern Baptist Church is like, well, we can't keep that. How do we keep track of that?
It's not our responsibility.
So the newspapers created one of their own. They're like, well, since the church won't do it, here's our list of what they were accused of, what they were charged with, whatever. Based on that, I cannot tell you what a bombshell that was for so many people, because then the question is, why did it take secular reporters to uncover all this? Why didn't the church get to this first? And the church leaders, now knowing they're under attack for this stuff, they're like, well, we'll do our own investigation.
Oh,
and
they're
honestly,
so good at those.
It took pushback from some of other church leaders who are like, don't you dare do an internal investigation. You give it to a third party to do, pay them to do it.
You said church leaders within Southern Baptist or outside?
The Southern Baptist Executive Committee is like, we'll do our own investigation. Like, no one trusts you.
But who? Okay.
And so they said, give it to a third party that does good work. It could be a Christian group. It's fine. Give it to them and give them access to whatever information they need, because let them do it.
Yeah.
We don't trust you to do an internal anything. And there was enough pressure and the votes were there to get them to do an actual investigation. So this was the Southern Baptists invested $4 million into this report. It took, it might have taken a couple years to put together. It involved interviews with hundreds of people. I think I read they collected over 5 terabytes worth of data and documents
Holy
to put this
cow.
together. And that is the report that was released this week. So we knew this was coming. We didn't necessarily know what it would say, but it's like, are you going to uncover anything that we didn't already know? Is it going to be worse than what we already knew? Or are you going to absolve church leaders of stuff? So that report was released, and here's basically, it was almost 300 pages covering 2 decades of like bad behavior. And among the things they found, it's a pattern of covering up or downplaying abuse at every step in the quote unquote hierarchy of the church. A couple things you should know. The report says it revealed a callous disregard for abuse survivors, a relentless commitment to protect the denomination from liability. Why didn't they keep a spreadsheet of bad pastors? Like, well, if a priest finds his name on there, and remember there was that list going around of like bad media guys?
No.
It was going around in some like journalism circles, and it was basically a Google Doc where people could enter like, this guy like harassed me or whatever at this job.
Oh, interesting.
And it created a legal issue because it's like there's no way to push back on it, and some of these are anonymous complaints.
Sure.
And if your name is on the list, what's the deal? And that's what the Southern Baptists said. Like, we can't keep a list because there's no way to investigate this.
And we're not getting investigated, so there's nothing to be done about it.
Right. So they're like, we don't want to be sued. But by taking that approach, they just let these people, if they didn't commit a crime that was taken, like police took care of it, these people just kept doing their crimes. They didn't look into it. It's like, oh, this pastor was accused of abuse, but he wasn't arrested. I guess we don't have to do anything. So that's one thing they found. Here's what the report said. Survivors and others who reported abuse were ignored, disbelieved, or met with the constant refrain that the Southern Baptist Convention could take no action due to its polity regarding church autonomy, even if that meant that convicted molesters continued in ministry with no notice or warning to their current church or congregation.
So doesn't this all sort of ring of the same thing of whether it's Christian nationalists or the Christian church or whatever, is they're not willing to protect anybody if it means perceivably infringing on their freedoms even the tiniest bit,
or ruining
even
their power, or making them accountable for anything,
or doing any work.
It's a very conservative mindset we are seeing in every realm.
It really
these days.
is. Like, we're seeing it with the shooting of like, ugh, I sure wish this wasn't happening, but I'm not going to do anything to stop it.
Right.
And like,
it's like, but if you can't stop it, you're the one with the power. You're the one on the executive committee here. You're a senator.
Right.
I can't do it.
Right.
You can. And the fact that you're throwing your hands up in the air for whatever reason, whether you're just like pointless and why are you here, like Sinema, or like Ted Cruz, who actively doesn't want to do any of this because he benefits from not doing it. Same with these committee members where it's like, what are you trying to protect? The reputation of the church? Is that what you're, and yes. One of the guys, Augie Boto, who was running the SBC for a while, he actually said in an internal email about the abuse allegations, it is a satanic scheme to completely distract us from evangelism. That's how he referred to allegations.
did you say satanic?
Satanic.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, these women. By the way, here's another bombshell in the report. They said, the Southern Baptist Convention said, like, we can't keep a list of the bad actors. They totally kept a list.
Oh,
they just did not
really?
tell anybody about it. Here's the quotation. The most
Because they
recent,
don't have the...
because they didn't want to get sued, so they didn't tell anyone there was a list. But that means they knew who the alleged abusers were and did not tell anybody.
Yeah, dog,
about
we
it.
knew they knew because they shuffled them around.
The list says the most recent list prepared by the executive committee staff member contained the names of 703 abusers, with 409 believed to be SBC affiliated at some point in time. Maybe others were like volunteers or something. Oh, by the way, there was another bombshell in the report.
Oh, good. I was worried.
It turns out one of the recent presidents of the Southern Baptist Convention, they get elected every couple of years, his name is Johnny Hunt. And one thing they found about him, I want to make sure I get this thing right. According to what investigators called this from Religion News Service analysis of this, according to what investigators called credible allegations, Hunt was accused of sexually assaulting the wife of another SBC pastor in 2010. That assault allegedly included Hunt pinning the survivor to a couch, pulling off her clothes, and then sexually assaulting her with his hands and mouth. By the way, that happened a month after he stepped down as president of this organization.
Jesus, these fucking men.
So, that report comes out. By the way, I think last week we mentioned another separate thing came out that the SBC membership has dropped for like the third straight year. They've lost like 1 million plus members in the past 3 years combined, which I hope this does more. Because if this doesn't do it, what will? One thing I do want to point out, though, 2 things. One is they're meeting this week. This weekend is the meeting of the Southern Baptist Convention Executive Committee. This is the weekend they normally elect a new president. This is the weekend where they can actually take action on this. This is why the report was released now. Because what are you going to do about it? And that's the question people want to know. Like, are you going to take action? Are you going to make a list? What are the consequences for people? Are you going to do anything about it? And finally, now there are calls from leaders saying, look, seriously, we will take it seriously. We're going to put a plan into place. But until we see what they're going to do, who knows? By the way, I want to point this out, too. This is important because these were not crimes, but we've talked about this on this podcast in the past. Former Southern Baptist Convention President Paige Patterson was a guy who told women trapped in abusive marriages to stay and pray.
I remember he was an asshole.
He made creepy sexual remarks about an underage girl. There was another pastor, Matt Chandler, who botched sexual abuse cases committed by his own church's staff members. He told his congregation that a staffer was fired over a sin issue when the issue was that the staffer secretly taped another pastor taking a shower at his house. There was another International Mission Board a member who sexually assaulted a 16-year-old girl and was allowed to resign quietly. I mean, these are stories that have been public over years of time, and it's all like all of this happened and the church did nothing. The denomination did nothing of consequence.
Because women mean nothing to these people. And obviously there were other victims and it wasn't all women, but they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about the young women because those young women don't matter. Like, all they matter is whether they can, like, give them a bunch of new, another generation of good white Christians. It doesn't matter if their brain works as long as their uterus does.
Until those babies go to, like, elementary school, at which point they don't matter. Katie Rich, a comedian, posted something on Twitter years ago, but she retweeted it this week. I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me. Republicans like treat babies like dolls in those packages. Like, they're great in mint condition before you open them, but the second you open them, they lose all their value.
That's very good. I also saw
sorry
one
for
that
butchering that joke.
No, this one was Texas, where they force you to carry your baby to term just so they can grow up and get shot in school.
Yeah, welcome, Texas. The report, the 288-page report, offered recommendations, like 30 pages of recommendations on what to do next. Among them, establish an independent commission, independent being the key word, to implement and oversee reforms, creating a group to deal with sexual abuse issues within the SBC with the appropriate staff and funding for it, compensating survivors, eliminating non-disclosure agreements when it comes to settling sex abuse cases. Like, no, let the victims talk. So again, the question is, those are the recommendations. What will the SBC actually do?
Can I ask, those are the recommendations or what?
What do you mean?
They gave them recommendations.
No, that's the nature of the report. They're like, they have no authority to do anything per se. They're saying our job.
So no, this is public information.
Yep, it's public
you
information.
can do with it what you want, and what they're going to do is.
That's what we're going to find out soon.
Nothing. I mean, the answer is nothing. Not that I necessarily can see the future, but what I can see in the future is they're going to do nothing.
One thing. Russell Moore, who is the former head of the SBC's Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, who's one of the few SBC leaders who has vocally spoken out on the right side of this particular issue. Well, here's what he wrote, acknowledging the bombshell of a report. Who cannot now see the rot in a culture that mobilizes to exile churches that call a woman on staff a pastor, or that invite a woman to speak from the pulpit on Mother's Day, but dismisses rape and molestation as distractions and efforts to address them as violations of cherished church autonomy? In sectors of today's SBC, women wearing leggings is a social media crisis. Dealing with rape in the church is a distraction.
Wow.
I mean, that is absolutely the problem.
Good for him.
One thing that the report did not talk about, and the thing they never will talk about in the church, of all the things they could possibly do this weekend, here's one thing they will never address: the broken theology at the heart of all of this. The idea that women, even, you could say they're equal all you want, but you treat them as inferior, which means their stories are not taken seriously, which means there are no women as pastors in the SBC, which means victims in the church, victims of abuse. Who are you going to talk to? The 12-member elder board of men? There's no one they can go to. That's never going to get addressed because, of course, you can't touch their religious beliefs. The way they push purity culture is never going to get addressed. The way women are excluded from positions of leadership. The way women who speak out are shut down or condemned. The way women are told to submit to male leadership, even when those men are abusers, or accomplices. The way they talk about LGBTQ people, even though it leads to sexual repression. And imagine if it's a male pastor abusing a male child, you have another reason to keep your mouth shut about it, because all of a sudden it's not just abuse you're talking about, it's homosexual abuse or something. They're not going to touch any of that.
That's the bad part.
That's never going to get addressed because none of these people, not the guideposts who did the investigation, not the SBC leaders, that is the stuff that is untouchable because it's religion. They'll maybe take some fixes here and there, sure, we'll do a committee or we'll do release. There is a move right now as we speak, at least show us that spreadsheet you created. But seriously, these are small potatoes compared to fix your beliefs. They're awful.
What do you think it would take to get a sort of Catholic Church style,
lawsuits going?
Yeah, statewide lawsuits because for the Catholic Church, they recently did this. You can speak on it better than me. They lifted some of the, not restrictions, what's it called?
There was a statute of limitations so that even if you got abused as a child 30 years ago and you theoretically could not sue over it, some states like California said, we're going to open a window where if you are a victim of child sex abuse, you can come forward with it and file a lawsuit.
What are the states that did that?
I don't remember off the top. Pennsylvania,
California.
I think California. I don't remember the others.
Just wonder if any capital R red states did it, because I feel like that's what we're going to be facing with the SBC is their. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would say one thing you take away from this report: women are still not safe in SBC churches.
Women still aren't safe anywhere.
True. That is absolutely true. I'm not saying that these women in the churches should become atheists. That is on them. I don't care. I'm not keeping a tally board. But they need to find a church that respects them, and SBC churches clearly do not. I mean, they fall under the umbrella, the guidance, the advice of SBC leaders who clearly do not. So, again, what are they going to do with this report? I don't know, but that is a bombshell. I mean, we're talking front page news of major newspapers when this was released.
Yeah.
Because it is a big deal to acknowledge how serious this sex abuse crisis is. And one of the articles I've seen being passed around, there's a couple versions of it, are how is this like the Catholic Church sex scandals? Because you can't hear the phrase Catholic Church these days without thinking sex abuse.
1-to-1.
And yet that's not the case for Southern Baptist churches, but it should be.
We're getting closer, though, I think. Yeah.
So,
Oof, boy.
Which story do I want to go to next?
Oh, my God. Can I just briefly say that I brought my dog, Dottie, to the barn this week, and she met my horse, Prince. Prince did almost kick her head off because he doesn't know how to play with dogs and not horses. But it was very fun and very adorable. So I just want everybody to have a little image in their head of a big white horse and a big white dog, but compared to the horse, pretty small. Amusing. They're very cute. And so you can just think about, unlikely animal friends of two dumb animals. And they're not dumb because they're animals. They're dumb because they're individually pretty dumb. Actually, Princess, I think, is smart. Dottie is dumb. Just trying to figure out how to play together. And they weren't successful. And it was a little scary, but also extremely funny to watch.
Let me jump to this one. In Florida, there's a state senator, Kelly Stargell. She's about as deeply red Republican as you could find in Florida. She is someone who spearheaded the state's 15-week abortion ban that I believe was passed. She pushed to ban trans girls from playing on the right sports teams in middle school and high school, because that's where the real problem is.
The big things in Florida, sure.
Yep. She's rubber-stamped DeSantis's awful COVID policies, and she's a state senator. Now she's running for Congress.
Good.
Of course she is. She announced her campaign like a week ago, and what was surprising is that one of the loudest voices urging people not to vote for her comes from someone who posted a video in which she said this. This is the same senator who passed the bill saying that trans middle schoolers and high schoolers will have a harder time to play sports in the state of Florida than even in the Olympics, as if that was a good thing.
Wait.
She's saying, that's what my mom said. We're taking action against trans kids. And, the Olympics are loose, but we're strict in Florida. Then this person goes on to say, considering the fact that Kelly Stargell is my mother and sent me to a troubled teen facility whenever I was only 15, I don't think that she really has a right to tell you or anybody else who can and can't be a mother, because she wasn't even a mother to her own children.
Wait a second. What?
Uh-huh.
Wait. Okay, you're going to tell me more. I assume I don't have to ask questions.
If I can do anything in my power to make sure that Kelly Stargell does not become a congresswoman from Florida, that would be awesome.
Oh my God, this is Ted Cruz's roommate all over again.
Yes.
That was so fun.
Yes. This is from Hannah Stargell, who's 28. She's gay. She posted this video on TikTok. This was her first video on TikTok, by the way. Hey. She's released a few more since.
How old? Can you give me an
28,
age?
28.
Okay.
And she also said, this is the same woman who wouldn't feed me if I didn't go to church on Sunday. A horrible person to look up to. She elaborated on that later, basically saying her parents made her go to church. But if she didn't go to church, well, the family would go to lunch afterwards. She wasn't invited to that. She just had to stay at home and make her things for herself. But basically, you have Hannah Stargell, who's openly campaigning against her mom. She told a local news outlet her mom's candidacy for Congress came as a shock, since Kelly Stargell had previously said she was going to step away from politics because of how hard it was on the family. Huh. But again, if you don't care about your family...
Yeah, that's much easier.
By the way, she's not even the only member of the family speaking out against Kelly Stargell, because last year, Laura Stargell, another daughter, wrote an essay for the Orlando Sentinel urging Ron DeSantis to veto her mom's anti-trans bill. She said,
I love when kids are anti their parents.
Laura wrote, I played sports all throughout middle, high school, and college without ever coming close to receiving an award or a scholarship. So saying I played sports for fun, I wasn't that good. But not once did I stop to consider what gender my teammates were assigned at birth. Instead, I remember the personal and professional growth in my life that I can attribute to my time on the field. ... The state legislature is more concerned with hypothetical harms than real world physical and mental health impacts.
And this is always what it comes down to, isn't it? Is that the Republicans are always ready to find a new boogeyman for you to, that's just behind the door. It's just in your closet. You can't see it, but the trans kids are coming for you in hopes that you'll be so incensed by this boogeyman that they're teeing up for you that you're missing the fact that they're actively trying to kill every one of their constituents.
They blame the Texas school shooting this week on the shooter being trans. That's not true, but they made it up and spread that rumor anyway. Like a congressman spread that rumor.
Oh, and they're mad because Democrats will say, hey, maybe we should pass laws so more children don't get hurt. And they're like, stop politicizing this. And they're like, I heard that he doesn't even have a penis. Who's ever heard of a boy without a penis?
Mm-hmm. It's all that matters.
Are nightmare humans.
Here's the question. Will any of this have an impact? I mean, look, first of all, kudos to those two kids for speaking out, because that is not easy ever, much less when it's your own mother. But we've talked about a couple years ago in 2018, there's a guy running for Congress, one of the most extremist Republicans in Congress, Paul Gosar, and his siblings, 5 or 6 of them,
so fucking
made
funny.
an ad for the Democrat running in the race saying basically, don't vote for my brother. He's a horrible dude. And of course, he won in a landslide because it's an overwhelmingly red district.
I'm really curious to see, like, I would love to see, like, an oral history of all of the times family members have campaigned against their family members, because I think that would be a really fun show.
Right. The irony here is Kelly Stargill's campaign website. She talks about how she's fought to prioritize Florida's families, which is bullshit because she doesn't care about her own.
Someone
and she
just
only
learned
cares
about alliteration in second grade.
And she only cares about your family if
Yeah.
you fit her conservative Christian mold.
As long as you're a white family. Have we, I'm sure we're not going to talk about, have we talked on this show about the Dr. Oz shit that's going down?
Which one?
Just the fact that he's running for Senate and there's going to be a runoff with him and David McCormick.
Both are horrible candidates, but like, I love that that made me happy that they've hired lawyers to fight against each other, and they're fighting over voter fraud. Like, well, what if someone sent in a ballot but it wasn't properly dated, even though we received it by election day? Because you have one Republican saying that should be valid because of course it should, and of the other side saying, no, that's fraud now.
Yeah,
it's like they're trying to rely on mail-in voting. Like,
because they can't. They've been calling for fraud. They've been calling fraud so long. Now it's the only drum they have to bang.
Yeah.
And so when it's a primary and they're calling fraud, it's like, my dude, against whom and for whom? Like, do you think that George Soros, or is that who they think is really?
One of
George Soros has like individual minions on each individual candidate? This is insanity. It's paranoia.
Keep fighting. I mean, John Fetterman's the guy running against eventual one of those two guys. He's fine.
Pennsylvania Senate, right?
Pennsylvania Senate. He's fine, but he also just had a stroke. So, like,
God.
He's out. He's
Can
okay.
we please have somebody who is...
Well, the funny thing about him, like a 7-foot tall, like burly white guy, he's very progressive, relatively speaking, for a
7
candidate.
feet tall?
He's like
That's irresponsible.
6'8" or 6'9" or something.
Jesus.
But he's huge. And basically he talks like, this is fucking stupid. Wears like sweat shorts and a hoodie everywhere he goes.
Oh, hell, wait.
He looks like a white-collar Republican who should be at the Capitol riots. And here he is like, marijuana should be legal. His entire campaign thing on Twitter is basically, if you elect me, I will always be the 51st vote for Democrats on all this shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's great.
Good job.
But
he had
like,
a stroke?
He did.
How old is he? When he said sweat shorts, I just imagined a 20-something college guy, so it really threw off my mental image.
A guy who's just in the gym a lot, you get the idea.
Sure.
Quick update to a story we did last week. Greg Locke had gone on stage. He's like, you can't be a Christian and vote for Democrats. And everyone on Twitter was like, go tell the IRS about this because he can't keep his tax-exempt status. Well, over the weekend, he made another video where he basically said, here's what he said. I almost brought the document. I was going to burn it right here on national television. He's not on national television.
What document?
So guess what I did this week? I got an attorney and I dissolved our stinking 501c3 in this church because the government ain't gonna tell me what I can and can't say. So IRS, we don't need your stupid tax exempt status.
This accent is whiteface and it's offensive.
Sorry, I got nothing. I don't do accents. Now here's the weird thing. So first of all, I don't know why he went ahead and did this because I don't know if he did it because he's genuinely worried of all these people telling the IRS. Like, not only did people literally tag the IRS on Twitter, which I don't think anyone cares about, or filled out complaints on the IRS's website, which I don't think anyone cares about, Americans United for Separation of Church and State sent a formal letter to the IRS to investigate this guy's church. I don't know if any of that got to him. So he's like, well, you can't fire me. I quit. I told the IRS to get rid of it.
Oh, Jesus.
I don't know if that's the case.
They weren't going to go after him. They don't give a
Here's
shit.
the weird thing. There is no indication that I could find, and I talked to a tax guy, and I talked to people, and I did look into this. There's no indication I could find that this is a registered church that this is a nonprofit church to begin with. And maybe they don't need to be registered, but usually there is a database of what counts as a nonprofit, even like there's a federal database for it.
Sure.
There's no indication he ever had a 501c3.
Wait.
And if you go to donate on his church's website, it's not like they even say your donations are tax deductible, which is kind of the whole point of the thing. They never say it. Because, of course, if you go to a church, the Circus Tent church like his, you're probably giving money, but you're not really thinking like, can I save this on my taxes? You don't care. You're just giving. So, like, I think he made a big... Here's my theory that I can't prove yet, but it's my hunch. I think he made this big show of saying, IRS, we don't need your 501c3 status, because he never had it to begin with. And he's just making a show of like, well, I did this thing that no other pastor will do, even though he's never been that guy.
It's ironic that these dudes all hate musical theater because they are so fucking showy, and they might as well be doing a big tap dance number around there. Like, all they do is bullshit and lie and say whatever comes into their head, and people applaud because you applaud when people like say something exciting. Clap, 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 clap. Like, it's really fun to be up in front of a crowd, but like you have to like
there's a blogger, David Carey Hart, who's done a lot of investigation into tax exemptions and stuff like that. And what he told me is Locke is just making shit up. Since his church is not a federally recognized nonprofit, there's absolutely nothing the IRS can do.
Sure.
And then he added, you can't revoke what does not exist.
Boom.
And here's the thing. What Greg Locke wants to do is tell people how to vote. He wants to preach politics, not the gospel. But, like, in theory, if you're a pastor who tells people how to vote, you don't get to also be a tax-exempt church. Well, Locke has always been political, and he's getting more political, and he will find one Bible verse and then spend like 30 minutes talking about why Joe Biden is evil. He wants to be
because of what the Bible said, that Joe Biden is evil.
It said that. Jesus said that. And he does this, and like he wants to get away with it, and basically he's basically saying like, that's what my church is now. It's a political rally, a MAGA rally that intersperses Bible verses every little bit.
I wonder if this is gonna like fade away. The MAGA of it all, like already Trump-backed Republicans have lost a ton in primaries. Not a ton, probably 3 or 4 or whatever. But like, is it? You know, are they burning out or are they fading away? Like, what is gonna happen with these people? They're gonna burn out. They're all gonna like fucking storm the Capitol. But
I feel like
they're gonna
fantasized about that 20 years ago, that like the crazy people will come to their senses, and of course they don't.
No, they got crazier. Okay, here's what I'm pitching, Hemant. You've seen Blazing Saddles, right?
I have.
Oh my God, really?
I know. I've seen one movie in my life.
Holy shit. Okay, but do you remember anything about it?
I do. Go on.
Okay, you know at the end, spoiler alerts for Blazing Saddles incoming. You know in the end when the way they save Rock Ridge is they build a fake city?
Yeah.
Okay, here's what I'm pitching. We build a fake Capitol building and put it like, I don't know, maybe somewhere in like Central Virginia, and be like, oh, hey, MAGA guys, Joe Biden is here, and he's saying that that boys are stupid and anyone who has a penis is dumb, and they all rush in, and then I guess
we
Gene
take
Wilder,
over the old churches or something?
Well, Gene Wilder, I think, blows something up. I don't remember the ending, but it does involve them going through a tollway in the desert, is what I remember, and I think we can get away with it. Listen, someone's got to go back and get a shitload of dimes is one of the finest lines in cinema history.
Oh, this isn't even on my list.
Oh.
Guess who lost a race this week?
Me.
Jason Rapert.
Yay!
He ran for lieutenant governor of Arkansas. Christian nationalist.
Does that mean does he still have his old seat?
He's a state senator right now. I think he gave up that seat to run.
Yeah!
Well, he's not going to continue on November.
Fuck you, Rapert.
Yeah, so he ran for lieutenant governor of Arkansas thinking he was the hotshot who's going to easily win this race. But I didn't follow this closely, but I think someone else who was thinking about running for governor as a Republican and said like, I don't want to be lieutenant governor. That's a stupid ass job. And then they were like, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is going to kick your ass as governor. So she's like, I want to be lieutenant governor. And so they're like...
Wait, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is now to be a lieutenant now?
No. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is the gubernatorial nominee for the Republican Party. She will win that race.
Right.
The person who wanted to do that job and was clearly figured out she's not going to win that primary. She's like, remember when I said that job would be boring, Lieutenant Governor? Yeah. I want that job.
JK.
And Jason Rapert's left like, but I quit my thing to run for this.
I thought we had an agreement.
And like, so this was the primary that happened this week. And that woman ended up getting more than 50% of the vote. Rapert couldn't even bring her to a runoff. That's how badly he lost. This is the guy who put the 10 Commandments monument outside the Arkansas State Capitol.
He is, for some reason, a Alabama state senator who I had to think about a lot. Arkansas state senator who I had to think about a lot. And I'm really glad that at least for a minute, I can stop thinking about him.
Just for a few. Okay, get this. Michigan Republican is running for state house. Her name is Jacky Eubanks. Very young, very Republican. She's a Trump-endorsed conspiracy theorist, that type. So, of course, she does an interview with a right-wing media outlet. It's called Church Militant, run by a Catholic named Michael Voris.
Michael Voorhees?
Voris. Voris.
Jason Voorhees?
Yes, exactly. So she basically said she opposes abortion. She opposes marriage equality. None of that is that surprising coming from a Republican. But they basically said, like, how are you going to vote on other issues that are politically maybe unpopular, but are still part of Catholic dogma?
Age, can you give me in her 20s or in her 30s?
20s.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe. But basically they were like, the question, which I think was meant as a softball question, like, okay, fine, you oppose marriage equality, you oppose abortion.
They don't call it marriage. It doesn't matter.
No, I do, right?
Of course, yes.
But,
I'm sorry. That was dumb.
But those are also Catholic doctrine. She's Catholic. He's Catholic. That's why he's asking about this. So, okay, you follow the church's teachings, and that's how you would vote. But also, that's what Republicans do. So that's not surprising. So he said, what's going to happen when there is something in Catholic doctrine that comes to a vote, but that is unpopular even among Republicans? What are you going to do then? He asks her. So here's what she said. Here's what Voris said. How do you answer the local press person who might be your age and just sees you as some loony who, she wants to take away your birth control in the state of Michigan? Basically, he said, how are you going to respond to that? The right answer, because I'm a political expert here, would be... they want to take away your birth control. Like, stop. You change the subject. You don't have to answer that question. I just want what's best for women, whatever your stupid answer is. Here's what she said. Sure. So I guess we have to ask ourselves, would that ever come up to a vote in the Michigan State Legislature? And if it should, I would say it should not be legal. And I think that that birth control they think it's better because, like, oh, then you won't get pregnant, then you won't need to have an abortion. But I think it gives people the false sense of security that they can have consequence-free sex. And that's not true, and it's not correct.
I'm offended by that voice you use because it feels aggressive at me.
So basically her answer that she said out loud
is I would 100% take away birth control because it gives women a false sense of security and thereby allows them to have sex without feeling terrible about it.
She admitted she would take away birth control, and she's running for office. Like, doesn't know politics 101. You don't say the stupid shit out loud for a soundbite that your opponents can use. What are you doing? But thanks.
Jesus Hammett, like, what else has anybody else said? Like, this is all the same shit. Like, she hasn't said anything that much worse than Plan B is abortion or whatever. Like, these people do not have a fundamental understanding of biology. They think that when the sperm sees the egg, the woman is, the person is pregnant, but it's simply not how it works. They don't care that pregnancy doesn't start until implementation. They just don't care. They make up their own laws. Literally.
Oh, I don't know if she's going to win that primary, but she's running.
Where
are you running? Michigan. Different part of Michigan.
Isn't anybody who listens to the Friendly Atheist podcast running for anything? Hammond and I, as we said before, cannot run. Our names are poison. However,
that is accurate.
We'll give you free ad space, probably.
Yes.
Right?
No.
Can we do that
sure
legally?
That's illegal.
Okay, we'll pay you.
As if anyone's paying attention.
We'll buy the appropriate. We'll take the appropriate amount of money to air ad space for you.
Sure.
The old atheist bump. That's what they call it. That's how Reagan got in office.
That's exactly it. We didn't talk about this. This happened a week ago after we taped last time, but it was a big deal until all the other shit happened. San Francisco Archbishop Salvatore Cordileone.
He's not Italian, is he?
He is maybe. He said Nancy Pelosi cannot get communion anymore because she supports abortion rights. Oh. He basically wrote a letter saying abortion rights amounts to a grave evil and a scandal.
Wait, sorry.
A Catholic
bishop. So this is, and she's from California. So
she's
this is
from
her,
San Francisco,
home.
Yeah. So this is her home church. The guy running the archdiocese for home church. He says after numerous attempts to speak with her to help her understand the grave evil she is perpetrating, the scandal she is causing, and the danger to her own soul she is risking, I have determined that the point has come in which I must make a public declaration that she is not to be admitted to Holy Communion unless and until she publicly repudiates her support for abortion rights, in quotation marks.
I wonder if he is keeping tabs on anybody from the San Francisco area, in Congress or whatever, who maybe voted against getting formula to babies.
Well, about that.
Wait, really?
I'm on top of this.
Did I accidentally segue for you?
You did. Because a couple of years ago, not necessarily him, but the Catholic Church in general, Bill Barr, when he was Attorney General under Trump, he brought back executions to the federal prison system, saying, you know how you were having, it was on hiatus, we didn't execute anyone? Bring that back. Which the death penalty is, from the top down, Pope Francis says no. Absolutely not. Never okay. Amy Coney Barrett got into a bunch of shit during her nomination because she had written a paper about, as when she was a law student or something, where she basically said, well, what do you do if you're a judge and you have a death penalty case because the Catholic Church says one thing, but the law may say another, but no one could ask her about it because it touches on faith. And of course, you can't ask her about that.
Sure.
But the church has a stance on the death penalty and execution. Bill Barr is a practicing Catholic who supports the death penalty. Did they remove his access to communion? No. No one in the church said, we'll deny Bill Barr communion. No one's doing it to Greg Abbott of Texas now, who is Catholic and supporting executions.
I know we have to do this. We have to highlight the hypocrisy in such stark terms. But it's just really exhausting to hear this kind of thing over and over of oh, really? They went after a Democrat for something that affects women, but don't give a fuck about poor and black people who are the prominent people who are on death row. Go fuck yourself. You don't care about life. You don't care about anything except for power. They do not
care about life.
They care about power and control and fucking...
One response I saw online was a bunch of conservative Catholics saying, well, yeah, his position, the Archbishop's position, is the right one. That is the Catholic Church position. So, who are you to tell the church what church policy is? And the thing is, look, if you want to, what I don't get, because they're right, that it is the church policy anti-abortion. It's a stupid one, but that is the church position. But, why are you singling out Nancy Pelosi? Just say, if you support abortion, all of you cannot get abortion, because keep this in mind. 48% of Catholics in the U.S., according to the Pew Research Center, support abortion rights in all or most cases. 68% of Catholics do not want to see Roe v. Wade overturned. Those are recent numbers. So, if you want to say, if you support abortion rights or you support marriage equality or whatever, then you can't get communion. Drive all those people out of the Catholic Church. Please do it. It would be wonderful. But they won't, because they can't piss off everybody. So he singles out this one person. And then he has the audacity to say his actions, this is the Archbishop talking, my actions are purely pastoral, not political. Come on. It is 100% political. By the way, Joe Biden, last year, he met with the Pope, and it was a controversy. Is Joe Biden going to get communion? Because he also, public policy-wise, supports abortion rights. And a bunch of conservative bishops were like, don't do it. Don't give him communion. And what did Joe Biden say after their meeting together? According to the Associated Press, Joe Biden said, the Pope told me I was a good Catholic and should keep receiving communion.
Oh.
And the Vatican didn't
So
deny
the
any of that.
archbishops were like, oh, no, we know better than the Pope because...
Right, that's the thing. Like, I guess, like, you're the one who gets to explain church policy, but apparently if the Pope says something, it doesn't matter. I know they don't like the Pope.
Truly, it's my
but still.
favorite thing that they're like, well, our Pope is our, like, vessel to God, except for when he talks about starving children. We hate when he does that. Like, that's not God talking. That's Pope Francis.
Speaking of Cordellione, this is the same guy. We talked about the California law that opened a window for victims of sexual abuse to file lawsuits, even if that statute of limitations had expired. Cordellione fought against that.
Cool. That's neat. That's a fun, cool, moral place to live. And I'm sure if heaven is real, Jesus will be like, yeah, you nailed that one, my dude. You really got my whole message.
Jacky Eubanks from Michigan, this woman says birth control. I would totally make that illegal. And what does the church say about that? Nothing. They will never condemn her for that because that's also what the church teaches, even though what she said in Michigan is way worse than anything Pelosi did. By the way, over the weekend, Pelosi went to church in D.C. because she basically lives there. And guess what? The priest there gave her communion because some priests are like, I'm not playing a game. Communion is not a reward. It is something I'm giving to you to help you be closer to God because that's what we believe. It's not to be weaponized.
Yeah, that's actually something
God judges you, not me.
I'm curious about. Of like, okay, it does feel like a slippery slope of, not that's a great argument, but a slippery slope of like, okay, Joe Biden can't get communion because he's pro-abortion, and Nancy Pelosi can't get communion because she's pro-abortion. How many Catholics are there in the House and Senate? So we have to check all of those. How many people are in local politics? Like, are they going to go into every Catholic's voting record to decide if they do or do not get communion? Because I don't think that's what Jesus had in mind.
Yep. Don't go to the Catholic Church if you're looking for like reasonable thinking.
Yeah, this is wild.
All right, last story.
Oh my God, I thought we were done.
Sorry, we're done after this. So several years ago, we're talking like almost 10 some years ago, I was very curious, like, who has the Atheist license plate in all the different states?
Oh, yeah, we talked about this.
It was interesting. Just like, someone's got to have it because it's legal. So, like, you can request that vanity plate. And I was kind of curious who has it in all these different states. Did we talk about this
last week off mic?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yes, we did.
Okay,
we briefly touched on it because this is what happened. So this is like 10 years ago. A guy messages me and says, I have the Atheist license plate in the state of Idaho. Not only do I have the Atheist license plate in this red state, it's signed by Richard Dawkins. And it's like, okay, I get it. You're an atheist.
Oh,
fine.
Boy.
Like,
it's on his car?
Like, it's just signed in the corner of the license plate, which his point was,
fine, whatever.
I am an atheist in Idaho.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not shitting around Dawkins signed my plate. Okay, very interesting. That was a while ago. Hadn't thought about it for a while. And about this, when we recorded last week, I got an email from this guy that I thought was unusual because I hadn't heard from him since then.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, I thought you might be interested. I ran for office in Idaho. I won the primary. And it's like, oh, shit, look at you, an atheist who got elected.
I'll add you to my list.
Yeah, right. I'll add you to my little list here. So it turns out there was a 4-way race for state senate in this primary in Idaho. One of the guys running was literally a longtime state house member hoping to get to the state senate. And then you had two like crazy people. And then this guy, Jeff Schroeder, who's like, you know what? I want to throw my hat in the ring because I work in local politics. I know the landscape. And I think I have a shot at this. Here's the kicker. Republican Party. He's a Republican. An Idaho Republican who just won the primary for state senate also happens to be an atheist with an atheist license plate signed by Dawkins. So, of course, the thing that happened last week, off mic, before we recorded so we didn't talk about it, was I'm like, wait a minute. You're a what now?
Let's learn more about this gentleman.
I'm very curious. I have questions.
Yeah.
So here's what I can tell you, because of course I'm like, well, what are your views on everything? Are you also insane?
Like, I want to be clear. I think you got the email when you were at my house,
Yeah,
and we're like talking through it of like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this information.
Well, yeah, because
it was
of
just
course
shocking.
my first thought is, well, good for you for running and for winning. And also, wait a minute, an Idaho Republican? Like, Republican would have also gotten my reaction. But like, oh shit, Idaho Republican. Like, we're talking deep red stuff.
Hell yeah.
Just FYI, the primary results, Jeff Schroeder got 32% of the votes in a four-way race. Second place got 27%. Third place got 25%. This was close. He came out on top. And by the way, there's no one running against him on the Democratic side. He has a clear pathway to the state
Idaho
Senate.
is it? If it's near Salmon, it's a beautiful part of the country.
Don't
If somebody
know.
wants to move there.
Don't remember. But so here's the questions that I finally got to ask this guy because I did speak to him.
Yeah.
Because I have questions.
What office did he run for?
State Senate.
State Senate. Yeah, okay.
Like, it's not a small thing.
Okay.
Right? And as far as I could tell, if he wins this race in November, which he should now, he would be the only elected Republican in the country at the statewide level or higher who is Republican.
And an atheist.
And an atheist.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. He would be the only atheist Republican in the country.
Who uses the A word.
Who uses the A word, or even a clone synonym type.
Well, that's
interesting. So what does this guy believe?
Odd.
That's the question, right?
Okay.
First question I wanted to know, did your opponents know this? Because you don't hide it. The fact that you're an atheist, you got the license plate, right? So like, was it used against you? He said, nope, no one brought it up. He said he didn't bring it up because why would he? Because his whole thing is like, I'm talking about the issues. So he didn't bring it up, but he said he was ready for an answer, which if someone asked him, because if you go on his website, his whole thing is I'm here to solve problems. He wanted local leaders to have more control rather than mandates from top down in the state. Like, we know our local issues, not the governor. Let us have control. He wanted to protect the education system against people trying to attack the education world.
From what way?
He didn't say.
Because
it could go either way.
Because that could either be critical race theory or that could be like creationism.
Right. He made it sound like he made it vague on purpose, but he said, I want to protect it from people coming from positions of ignorance. Whatever. You're right to say that's vague. And then he said, I want to make sure my district has access to good, clean water, which is a very local, fine issue to care about.
Listen.
So I'm like, okay, but there's nothing on his site about MAGA or, all the conservative things you expect to hear. Religion was not a part of the primary, which is another thing to say. He was going to say, if anyone brought it up, like, well, there's no religious test for public office. I support religious freedom, including freedom from religion. He was going to say, my wife is Christian. So he's not some anti-theist picking fights here. He happens to be an atheist, which, by the way, is the right answer if you're a politician running. Like, I am, but I'm not running to be, like, an atheist for you or something. Okay. By the way, there's a group in Idaho that endorses non-crazy candidates. They endorse this guy. So really, for most primary voters, your choices were two far-right crazy people, a guy who's been in the state legislature, which is either a good or bad thing, depending on your definition of that,
right,
or a newcomer who seems pretty moderate about the issues, and it turns out the moderate won. Okay, why is this guy a Republican then? Well, basically, if you're in Idaho, and especially in the part of Idaho where he's from, you can't not be Republican if you want any chance at political life.
I see.
The guy who was in this state Senate seat won pretty much every race with like 70, 80% of the votes, like repeatedly.
Sure.
Most of the time, Democrat. I don't think a Democrat has run for state Senate in that district since 2012 because you're not going to win. So what do you do if you're a Democrat? Like, you're out of luck. If you want a chance at this particular seat, you got to be a Republican.
So is he saying he's not necessarily a Republican, but gave himself the label because...
Very good question.
Okay.
So
thank you. I ask questions for a living.
He's worked in Republican politics in the state for a long time. This is a guy who... he served 2 terms on the local city council. This is in Mountain Home, Idaho. He served on the city council. He spent 2 decades in the Army National Guard in Idaho. In 2010, he became a precinct committeeman for the Elmore County Republican Party. He became their vice chair. Then he was their chair. He's worked in the party system for a while. So he knows the landscape in that front. So, of course, I had to ask him, like, well, where do you stand on all the shit anyone actually cares about? So a couple things that he told me. I want to make sure I'm representing his views correctly.
Sure, me too.
He's not engaging really in culture war battles. He's focusing on like roads, bridges, water, things like that. He said, yeah, there are loud extremists out there, but he said they're not the majority of my constituents.
Okay.
He put the number, he said it was a fringe, right? But he said they were 30% of the party. And I'm like, buddy, that's not a fringe. But he did say we need to fight back. What about issues that I'm very curious about?
Okay.
Before I get to those, he said he got criticized for acknowledging Joe Biden won the election.
Wow, that's where the bar is now?
I found an old blog post from 2011 where he had apparently gone to some atheist meetup and told a story. This is about his time as city council, where it was his turn to deliver the invocation. And what did he do? According to the other person who was there, he agreed to deliver the invocation, folded his arms, and stared at the clock for about a minute. Eventually, the person next to him nudged him and asked when he was going to start. And he just said that the invocation was done and they could move on. Interesting. Interesting.
And that's using a curmudgeonly manner for good, and I support it, but curmudgeons don't get far in my book.
He fought against censorship in libraries, which is interesting. Okay, what about...
So it sounds like he's like an actual, like, pre-Reagan Republican, like an actual small government.
I asked him, do you admire any current Republicans? Like, are you like an Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney types?
Me. Who?
He didn't mention any of them. He told me he supported like an old Governor Phil Batt, who's a former Idaho governor who ran the state until
Batt.
I know, like from 95 to 99, who was not an extremist Republican, but like a guy
for 4 years.
He brought up Barry Goldwater. He brought up actually a former Idaho Supreme Court Chief Justice Jim Jones, who I've mentioned before because he's a guy that's lashed out against right-wing extremists, written a lot of posts, like editorials in his retirement, saying all this stuff. So he sees himself as a pragmatic guy.
Sure.
So what does he say about like abortion, LGBTQ rights? It's true that if you're working at a local level, those things don't usually come up.
Fair.
So he hasn't had a record on that stuff we could point to. But like, what are you going to do when those things come to a vote in the state legislature? Because they will. Here's what he told me. He didn't give me specifics. He said the questions guiding his votes would be, what's the proper role of government? Does this bill accomplish that? And so I'm like, that's a cute answer. Like,
yeah,
well,
that's
what's
nothing.
the answer? Like, do you support abortion rights? He said medical decisions are not the role of the government. He opposes politicians making decisions for women. And then he also said, there was no but. He said he's adamant that Republicans focus on issues. Like, one of the things he was mad about is that by state Republicans focusing on that shit, they were ignoring infrastructure problems that hurt his community, which is true. He wanted to make that difference. So, I mean, he's also been a longtime critic of the Lieutenant Governor, Janice McGeehan, who just lost her primary and who's extremist. He's fought against, like, the Trumpist sides. My favorite, someone said they called him basically a rhino, Republican in name only. Yeah. His response to them, this is, I think, on election night. His response to that troll on Twitter, fuck you. Which, that's how you do your victory parade.
Fuck yeah, dude.
So interesting. He's a Republican. Doesn't seem to be one of the insane ones.
Okay.
But what does that actually mean in practice? I don't know. There are two small atheist Republican groups, to my knowledge, like that actively court, like, yeah, atheists can be Republicans. And I have my issues with both of them. But noticeably, he is not part of either of those groups. I don't think he's a fan of either of those two groups.
I wonder if this gentleman is one of those hypothetical people that I always said when I talk about, like, I truly believe that the country would be better with two strong parties who actually care about, like, like, is he one of those Republicans?
I don't know. But here's the thing. It looks like he's going to win this race in November because there's no opposition. We will soon find out what happens when he is in office. I've known in my recent history 2 atheist Republicans in state politics. One of them changed parties to libertarian real quickly after he came out. And then he got voted out next time around. as an atheist.
Oh.
The other one was in Ohio, where he was like, he had no principles about anything. He just kind of went like, yeah, I'm black and I'm atheist and I can work with everybody. And then he got arrested, I think, for charges of like campaign finance, something.
Cool.
Like those are the only two Republican atheists I knew. They're both out of politics now. Now there's this guy, Jeff Schroeder. What's going to happen? I don't know. Jeff, if you're listening, don't be one of the crazy people, please.
Oh boy.
Like in Idaho, if you're a moderate Republican, you might actually be able to do some good.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, I'm from,
That's all I got. That's all I got. That's enough. Like I said, there's like 5 or 6 stories that could have lasted an entire thing.
And it's midnight. Like this is so much later than we normally go. Boy,
Where do we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Jess Blumke. You can go to my Etsy shop, Bitches Get Stitch Done. Hemant, where can we find you?
I am at Hemant Mehta on Twitter. Please go to patreon.com/friendlyatheistpodcast. And I don't know, maybe
you can always email us at friendlyatheistpodcast@gmail.com. You can leave a review, which honestly, every time I...
Read it later. We're done.
Oh, we're done.
We'll see you soon.
Goodbye.
Next week. Bye.